Hey everybody, and welcome back to Storytime with Mr. Chris. I want to thank all of our students from Karate America Oregon, Karate America Brookfield, and Karate America Pewaukee for joining me. Today we are going to be reading Chester the Brave, written by Audrey Penn and illustrated by Barbara L. Gibson. Before we get started, I want to ask you all a question. Have you ever been afraid to do something? I know for me, I have been scared to do many things. Like when I have to talk in front of a large group of people, I get nervous and I start to shut down. I get very scared. What about you? Is there something that you're afraid to do? Turn to someone in the room and ask them. I'll give you 30 seconds. All right, go. Thank you all for sharing. Today we're going to read about a raccoon named Chester who was scared to do something new. We are going to see how he handled his fear. Let's get started. Chester Raccoon sat snuggled in his mother's lap. The last golden rays of sundown shone through their tree hole, and his younger brother Ronnie lay curled up fast asleep on the far side of their hollow. "This is my very best time," Chester told his mother, lifting his eyes to her. "This is my very best time too," she told him sweetly. "Do you still want me to tell you about the little robin?" "Yes, please." "Well," Miss Raccoon began her story. "He stepped up to the edge of his nest, bent his little legs, lifted his tiny wings, and said, 'I can't. I'm too afraid,' and hopped back into the safety of his nest." "He was too afraid to fly?" asked Chester Raccoon. "Yes, he was," answered Miss Raccoon. Chester looked very worried. He drooped his head and stuck out his lower lip. Did the little robin think it was okay to be afraid? "He thought it meant he wasn't brave," explained Chester's mother. "You see, the little robin's brother and sister flew their very first time, and he thought that meant they were very brave. And if they were very brave, he thought it meant he wasn't." Chester appeared very upset. "Was he right?" he asked his mother. Miss Raccoon smoothed out the fur on top of Chester's head. "Well, the little robin's father told him that it wasn't that his brother and sister were brave. It was the fact that they simply weren't bothered." Chester lifted his head and peered up at his mother. "What does that mean?" Miss Raccoon laughed. The little robin wasn't sure what it meant either, so his father asked him if he was bothered when he was eating worms. Okay, on this page we see the father robin tell him that his little brother and little sister were not necessarily scared, they were just bothered. What do you think that means? Turn to someone in your room and share your thoughts with them. I'll give you 30 seconds. I think that the father meant that even though they were afraid to fly, they still didn't let it get in their way of doing it. Even though they had a lot of fear, they did not let that fear control them. And that's an important part of having courage. Let's continue. "Oh, yuck!" shrieked Chester. "That's disgusting. What did he say?" "He said he wasn't bothered eating worms at all. He said he loved eating worms, especially the big, long, thick, stretchy kind." "Ugh!" bleated Chester. His nose and mouth twisted and squished together, and his entire body shuddered. Eating worms would bother me. Miss Raccoon nodded. It would bother me too, she confessed. Then the little robin's father asked him if he was bothered when he was singing. And the little birdie began tweeting and said he wasn't bothered when he was singing at all. Singing is a lot better than eating worms, grimaced Chester. I agree, said Miss Raccoon. Then the little bird's father told him that being brave wasn't about flying when he wasn't bothered to fly. Being brave was about flying when he was bothered to fly, but found the courage to fly anyway because he knew he must. What's the matter? His mother asked. Reciting lessons in front of the other animals at Owl's teacher's school is the worst thing that I've ever had to do in my life, too, he whimpered. Is that so? Asked Miss Raccoon. She gave Chester a reassuring hug and then took his tiny hand in hers and gently kissed the center of his palm. Shall I tell you what happened to the little robin? Or would you rather jump on top of Ronnie and wake him up for school? Chester giggled. I want to know what happened to the robin. Well, the very next day, the little robin's mother tucked one of her own tiny flight feathers into his wing and told him it was for good luck. So even though he was still bothered about reciting his lessons, the tiny bird stood in front of all the other birdies in our tree and twittered. I lift my head to the clouds, I push off with my feet, I flap my wings and let the gentle breeze take me for a ride. And while he was still afraid to fly, he found the courage he needed and said to himself, I am very brave. Then he stepped up to the edge of his nest, spread his wings, pushed off with his feet, and flew away. After all, he was a very brave little robin. Hooray! Clapped Chester. Do you know what I think being brave is? Asked Miss Raccoon. Chester shook his head. I think being brave is about 3 little words. Think, tell, do. If you think you can't, tell yourself you can and do it. Miss Raccoon lifted Chester's hand. Can you see my kiss in your palm? Chester laughed. No. Well, you know it's there. And it's for luck, just like the robin's little feather. Chester jumped off his mother's lap, bent his knees, opened his arms, and yelled, I am very brave. Then he ran to the other side of the hollow, and with a flying leap, landed on top of his brother. Wake up, Ronnie! It's time for school! Chester the Brave has a speech to make. Later that night, Chester Raccoon stood on a branch at Owl Teacher's school. He remembered what his mother said about think, tell, do. If I think I can't, I tell myself I can and do it. I am very brave. Then he opened his hand, and there, in the middle of his palm, was his mother's gentle kiss for good luck. Even though Chester was still the tiniest bit afraid, he recited his lesson in front of all the other animals. After all, Chester is a very brave little raccoon. Okay, Chester learned a very important way to overcome his fear. His mother taught him 3 little words to remember. Think, tell, do. That means if you think you can't do it, tell yourself you can and do it. Now knowing about think, tell, do, think about the question we asked at the beginning about what you were afraid of. Turn back to that partner in the same room with you and think about how you can use think, tell, do to overcome it. Great job, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap it up here. One of our values at Karate America is we discover the leader within. Repeat after me. We discover the leader within. A leader is someone who influences people in a positive way. And it takes courage to be a leader. Courage means doing the right thing when others won't. It includes even standing up to a bully. Courage could mean trying out a new technique in karate class. Being a leader requires courage. So whenever there's an opportunity for you to step up and you feel fear, remember those 3 little words: think, tell, do. That's it for today, guys. I can't wait for you to see what else we have in store. All right, goodbye.